Welcome to our latest support chat, which is how to mask like a pro, showing smoke and fire behind buildings and through windows. And I'm Jonathan Kay. I'm the president of SimsUshare and CommandSim. Thank you for all those who are joining us live, and also for people who are going to see this later. After the talk, we'll have the recording available on our YouTube channel, so you can check it out if there's some things that have gone too fast or some little details that you might have missed. Now, how to mask like a pro. I don't know if anyone really gets a job professionally at masking. If there is, certainly let me know. But the idea really is that masking is one of the real essential skills in making the fire simulations look realistic, and can be a little tricky to get started. But I think once you see the core idea of it, you're going to find it's pretty straightforward to get most of the way, if not all the way, to what you want to do. What you want to achieve. Like a lot of these things, you can, almost like golf, you can make your big strides very quickly, and then you can spend a lot of time on the putting green. And our experience is that you really want to decide what is kind of good enough, because you can really waste a lot of time working on some details that may not be so critical. So masking is very important, but at the same time, you really want to work, obviously, on your instruction and getting the instructional objectives into your scenarios. And masking is a nice little effect, but certainly my advice from someone who has been there is don't go crazy about trying to get every little detail in masking. Of course, I always like the opportunity to, one of my favorite expressions is that good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. So I'm letting you know from experience that you don't want to spend too much time getting it, but be careful of that. You can spend a lot of time on things that may be relatively unnecessary. Now, having said that, we're going to be talking in two parts. I'll be talking for about half an hour. Anyone who would like to just sort of chime in, certainly let me know. We'll be doing a lot of examples. We'll cover first the basics, what the purpose is, about really then also the core tasks of using masking, which is to manipulate and get the visuals in place so it looks like your effects, your smoke, your fire, and really anything can be masked. Get them, try and get a real solid core understanding of that. When we get to more intermediate advanced, talking about things like masking multiple elements, different types of masks, and then discussing some different masking situations. So I'm going to switch over to the program. Certainly if anyone has any questions, I've now opened up the microphone to let you know as I switch over. If there are no questions, you can either talk or you can use the chat window to prepare to ask what you like. Let's see, here's now my SimsUshare window. And so now really I mentioned first the purpose. What's the purpose? It's easiest to show by example. If we look here on this scenario, you'll see that we have smoke coming out of the garage. But you'll see also, if you look carefully, the smoke is kind of cut off right at the door. We want it to look like the smoke is coming from the garage, but not right out of the garage through the door. So what masking is the ability to cut off certain parts of elements. Smoke, fire, and I say elements, I mean it can be anything, the smoke, fire, people, to make it look like the element, the effect, is coming from behind something or through slits, like in this situation, coming through the slit at the top of the garage, the opening. You can make masks look like that they are inside windows, or, as we'll kind of talk about some other things, behind buildings, maybe in the ceiling, or things that don't have to do with smoke or fire, hiding people. Maybe you put a victim behind some boxes. So we're going to go into what that looks like. So now let's just talk about what it's like to create a simple mask. That's always we're talking about the basics right now. So if I actually now say, let me talk about mask example 1, or I'll just say mask EX1, and select a photo from the disk, and I'm going to take the basic here is like burn building. So I've got my burn building there, and now if I just take, let's say I want to make some smoke, I'm going to say all smoke. And I'm going to make some turbulent smoke come from, let's see, I'll make it come from the windows over here. So I'm just going to scale this down. I'm going to move this kind of in place. Let's just say it's over there. Actually, let me move it into the front here. So now with something like this, that may not be too bad just as is. You got sort of smoke coming from over there. But now let's say we also want to have some smoke. I'm going to add in, so let me add some fire. I'll add some fire. Put some fire over here. I'll scale that down. And still, not too bad. Fire is coming out there, but let's say I want to make sort of a raging fire inside that window. So it's a little bit bigger, and you see, you don't need to use masks. Even if I were to making it from the top of the roof, I can just put the smoke there and sort of approximate what I'm doing. But I want to actually make it look like really cut off the fire at the base of this window, make it look a little more realistic. So I'm going to go over here, and so the key thing with masks is I go to the plus key and then say utility, and inside here is where I have the mask. So I click on mask. Now the first time you use a mask, it's going to come up with a message which will link to a help video about it. So it says it's a little more advanced feature, and click here if you want to see. Now this mask here really isn't doing anything. It's another element just like the smoke and fire. So when I clicked on it, I get editing element CS mask. When I want to hide other things, it works exactly the same as that. So when I hit done, I'm over there. And now, so if I, so it's the element there, I just move around the same way. So if I now go and play the scenario, it really has, the mask hasn't been told what to do. So our scenario is exactly the same. There's really nothing of interest there. The mask isn't really cutting off any of the elements. So I actually have to tell the mask what to cut off. So when I clicked on editing a mask, I click on the pencil tool, and you'll see there are three things. What do I want to mask? What's the boundary? And what's the type of mask? So let me start out by saying what I want to mask. So when I do this, I see, oh, there's two elements there, gray turbulent and basic fire. This will be listing all the elements that are in your current picture. And let me say I want to mask out the basic fire. So I click on that. And so if I hit done now, and now the mask, so that it doesn't interfere with other things, only is clickable on the edge or on this big diamond area. So if I click here, you notice I actually hit the gray turbulent. I didn't hit the mask. So that's what this big diamond thing is here for. Now as you add more masks in, you may find out the mask gets sort of buried under things. And so the mask, if I can actually get to the mask here by clicking on it, it's good. You can always just change the relative visual order of the mask. Now when you're masking elements, that visual order doesn't make the thing work or not work. But it makes it easier if you keep your mask up close to you so you can select it from that big diamond thing. So if I now go here just to show you what happens, if I put the mask here, you'll notice there's a sort of translucent area, and that's what gets cut off in whatever effects are masked. So if I hit done now and I hit play, you'll see how that area where my mouse is pointing right now is cut off. So that's if that were like a windowsill, that'd be perfect. Now it doesn't happen to be right at the sill where I want it, so it's not exactly right out of the box how I want it. What I want to do now is I want to go here, and I can certainly move this around, move it around. Now sometimes if I want to get to like the sill area where it's obscured by these elements, I have to hit hide other elements, and now I can actually see what I'm going to be masking. Now one of the other aspects here, one of the other characteristics or properties is which to mask and mask boundary. So if I hit mask boundary, this lets me now change the boundary, the actual points that define the area to cut off. So I can move these things around and change. So if I were to, let's say, make that sort of diagonal, I can do some sort of funky things. And so you can see if I now go here, you can have, like if there was some beam or something that was cutting across the effect, I could mask out just that beam. But now to actually do something practical, I'm going to click on it. I'm going to go here and say mask boundary. And now I'm going to say, okay, let me go here, let me hide these elements, and let me make the fire just not only cut off at the base here. Now I no longer can just use 4 points. Let me try and cut it off in around the window area. So in this situation, I click on the plus key over here. Plus then says, if we could see this, it says click to add a point. I click where I want to add my point, sort of, and it will try and figure out the closest points to basically intersect. And this is now a way that I can go and add points to my situation. So I can go here and manipulate this. Now if you're working on Windows or Mac, you can use the arrow keys. If you look carefully, I'm now clicking on the right arrow key. I can hit a little tip, an advanced tip. If I hold Shift down, the Shift key, while clicking, it will go at a faster rate. So that can be for some more fine details. I use the arrow keys to get really the precision that I want. And I can basically now add in some more points. And so what I'm really doing is kind of framing that window sill there for that fire. So it looks like kind of a mess here. But if I actually now look at this, I click on it if I want to modify those points. I go to Mass Boundary again. I try and go back over here. I can sort of click on stuff. I click on which point I want. And now when I'm done, and I click play, now let me actually move I'll move the right side of this over a bit so you can see it getting cut off more. I'm going to click again on mask. I'm going to go to Mass Boundary. I'm going to click and move this. Let me see if I can move this a little bit further over. I'm just sort of editing the points. Now, similarly, if I decide I've just got too many points, I can use the minus key to remove a point. So now if I go here and I hit play, you can sort of see that it's getting cut off on both sides there. And it's a little bit is peeking up over there. But that's going to be good, as we see for the next example, of making things over roofs or around the sides of buildings. So let me just say that I'm okay with that here. And let me now add another element. We go and say I'm going to have smoke, and I'm going to have some laminar smoke. Bring that down here. I'm going to make that a little darker so we can see it. I could certainly put that up at the, I've got to go back here. I could certainly put that up at the top, and it sort of suggests that there's smoke coming from maybe at the top or from the other side. Once I put it over here, you'll see that it looks the smoke is clearly coming from the side that's closest to us. Looks like the sort of the alpha. Well, it's the sort of we're at the alpha Bravo view if we talked about that as alpha. So if I wanted to make it though clearly look like it's on the opposite side, I can't really with this sort of pinpoint stuff do something like make it the smoke fully involved and yet still have it not sort of floating up in the air. So what I'm going to do now here, first step, is I'm going to create a mask that's going to mask out that roof line. So I go here, I create another mask, and now it's easier if I hide these elements. And what I'm going to do now is I want to basically mask out this roof. So I go here, first thing I may want to do is I say, what to mask? Well, the gray turbulent was the smoke that was closest to us. I don't want to mask that with this mask. I want to mask the gray laminar one. So I click that yes. Now I want to actually go and change the mask boundary. So what I'm going to do is now go here to sort of follow the roof line. And I'm just going to click to make that happen. So any part, again, this sort of translucent part, anything that falls in this area gets cut out of the picture. Everything outside is visible. So I already set up that the mask is applicable to that laminar smoke. And now I've set the boundary. So now when I actually go and play this, we'll actually see here that the smoke looks like it's coming from behind, with the exception, notice how over here the laminar smoke is in front of this turbulent smoke. So that's not what we want, because we want the smoke to be behind the turbulent. Well, that's easy enough to solve just by clicking on the turbulent smoke itself, the relative visual order. When we were clicking on these elements, we just added the laminar after, which is why it got placed in front of all the others. It was a new one, so it gets placed on top, closer to the viewer. So what I can do here, I use the selection rotator to rotate through my selections. See, and so if I needed to click on the mask, but I couldn't really select it, I was having a hard time, use the rotator and to get you to the right thing. So if I click now, that's the right one, I click on that, and now I'm going to drop the laminar smoke behind. And if you notice you might have seen that little pop. I'll do it again here. If I bring it forward, it's ahead of the turbulent smoke. I bring it behind down there, and now it's behind it. So now, when I do this, now it definitely looks like we've got something cooking on the rear side of what we're looking at, rather than being in front. So even though we didn't really need to add any more points, I think we still had, for this one, there is 5 points there. Now there may be a situation, so you've got these masks here, and you can have as many masks as you want. You can also have masks apply to several elements at the same time. So if I actually go here, let's take our mask over here, and let's say that now we're going to see what happens, which to mask. We know that it's already assigned to the gray laminar, but we have the opportunity of saying let's also assign it to gray turbulent. So now think about what you're actually going to see. Well, this gray turbulent is this black smoke in front. So we're going to now see, we should be seeing that it's going to get cut off within this mask area. Any black smoke that's in this area is going to get cut off. And we'll see that works out exactly what we expected. So it doesn't really make much sense for this situation. But you see that, so a mask, the key walk away here is that a mask can apply to several elements at the same time. I'm going to go back to this over here to basically release that element from this mask. So I'm on that mask, and I say which to mask, and I'm going to say gray turbulent, no. So again, the key thing is that one mask can actually mask many elements. Now, the opposite is not necessarily true. Well, I don't know if it's the opposite. So if you, this is useful because if you have many things on the opposite side, you only need one mask, and you can then turn on and say mask the fire and the smoke and all this other stuff. Now, what I was going to say about the opposite is that you cannot have multiple masks hide one element. So once an element is attached to a mask, then that element is no longer accessible for other masks to grab or to apply to. So if you need to have, let's say in this situation we needed to have one element that was sort of the combined mask of both of these, we would actually have to create a new mask that's just a single mask that encompassed the whole area. You can't have, again, I'll repeat that, you cannot have a one element like the fire be masked by both or more than one mask at the same time. So there are usually ways around things, anything that you can certainly let me know if there's anything I can help you with. I'm going to just pause for a minute to see if there's any questions. Anyone have any questions about this? I think
I'm good.
Oh, okay, great, Joe. So we've really now covered the basics, adding and removing, manipulating masks. So now removing is just as easy like anything else. You just click on this thing and then you'd hit the X key. It would say, are you sure you want to delete the element? And you'd say yes, and it would go away. And we also saw about the visual order. Sometimes as you add more elements after you've added the mask, this will then, the mask will no longer be right at the top. So if I, let's say, add some more smoke over here, and you'll see here the mask is no longer there. The visual order of the mask is not important. The mask will always hide the elements that are beneath it, no matter whether the mask itself is in the front or back or anywhere between. But it's always, and then you can always use your selection rotator to actually get to your mask if you start having more than a couple different elements there. So if I ever need to reach the mask and I can't reach it by just clicking on it directly, I use the rotator. Now for some people, you may not see that rotator. That's an option. By default, the program comes out where that rotator is not visible when you're editing the whole scenario. So you may have to go into the menu here, Show Selection Rotator, and then that button shows up. So I'm going to get rid of this over here, and that really takes us through the basics of this. Let me now switch back over to our agenda here. Now we're going to see here we've covered the basics, and now I'm going to get into some renaming elements and masking multiple elements, which is already done, and what we call mask types. So let me switch back over to my scenario here, and I am going to be over here. Let's see, make sure that it's showing the right view. Okay. So now one thing I mentioned, renaming elements. it can be a bit confusing when I'm like going this mask over here and I say which to mask. You see gray laminar, gray turbulent. It may, as you get more elements, it may be hard to remember what's number 1, what's number 2. So just keep in mind that if you want to actually give your elements more meaningful names, all you have to do is click on them, and then in the menu here there's something that says rename selected element. So if I rename this now, oh, that's gray turbulent 1. Well, I want that to be Bravo heavy or so. So now if I click on Bravo heavy, or now you notice it says editing element Bravo heavy. Now then that gets changed everywhere that that element was used. So in the mask, if I click on the mask here, you'll see if I say which to mask, it's now I've done Bravo heavy. So you, depending on how much time you want to spend on the scenarios, you may or may not want to actually rename elements to make them more intelligible to you. Now when there's only a couple elements, it's easy enough to know what they are. But if you have a lot of elements, it may be better to identify them. Now notice here, if I actually, if now Bravo heavy is, if I claim it with the mask, meaning this now this mask is going to apply to that Bravo heavy element, I click done. If I click on the other mask and I say, well, I want to now let me mask, let me see what else is there. I'm going to mask. Notice that Bravo heavy doesn't show up, or even the laminar doesn't show up, because it's intelligent enough to know it was claimed by some other mask. So it's not going to let you mask something that is already being masked by another element. So that can be a little confusing if you're saying, well, where's my heavy smoke, where's whatever. The idea is that a mask can apply to multiple elements, but once that element is claimed, the other mask can't get to it. Now, if you, as soon as that other mask releases its claim, so if I click on this mask and I say, you know what, I really don't want that Bravo heavy anymore, then that element goes back into the pool of things that can be claimed by other masks. So now I click on this one and I say which to mask, and there now Bravo heavy is available to be masked. So that gives you the basics. I mean, I know it's the basics and a little bit more of how you mask. And now again, some situations, whether you want, like we've seen, behind buildings, you might want to do things under doors, in the ceiling, in the eaves, through windows, and it just gives you a lot of possibilities to make your smoke and fire look much more realistic. So just because you know, sort of a little bit of showing now, let's say over here, let's talk about what I mean by masking type. So so let's say let's start a new scenario here. Again, anyone have any questions? I'm happy to, as I sort of switch over here, let me know if you have, you can just talk, or I'm going to say now.
I'm okay.
Joe, do you have a question?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to select a photo here, and let's do an interior. Okay, and so if I let me just put some banking down smoke in here. Let me do some let me say inside that living room there, or wherever it is, whatever that thing is, I'm going to see a lot of smoke. And actually, let me put this smoke. This is going to be our sort of general smoke. I'm going to now make the opacity like that. But I want to put some smoke in that back room, or maybe a fire, maybe a little more interesting. So I'm going to make a fire in the back here. But now I could try and shrink it, you know, to try and say I want to get just into that slot there. And let me drop it beneath my banking smoke. I could try and squeeze it in. I could try and use the narrow widen to try and, you know, get it into the right spot, which may not be so bad. But, you know, obviously since the fire is really spread out, we want to do it more realistically. We want to cut off that fire where it's lying. So if I go here, let me actually put this into the ceiling, really make it snazzy. Put it into the ceiling. So now what I can do here is I can mask, in this situation, when I want to mask that fire, I need to mask both sides of this. So if I were doing this, I'm going to get rid of this banking down smoke for now for visual. But now let me go here and say, okay, I'm going to make a mask. And if I go here, I could easily cut off one side or cut off the other. Or I could also try and do something a little tricky by saying mask boundary, and I could try and say, let me mask this out, and when I'm down over here, let me start adding some points. Whoops, sometimes that's what's a good idea to try and be close to where you want to add your points, because it can sometimes not get the effect that not know exactly where to put them. So if I go here and start doing this, and I could actually go and kind of mask this out. So Let me, I could try and make a more complex shape than which I want, but I'm not going to do that. Sometimes it may get really kind of kooky there, but then it may get to a point where I say, boy, I'm really getting in trouble. That's what this square is. If I click on the square, it says, you know what? Let me remove everything and replace it with a square. Let me just start again. So there I am starting again. Now, so you could make a complicated shape that's going to mask it out, or that we have another mask type. If we actually go here, whoop, let me move that back over there. If I now say, let me go here, if you notice mask type, we have something called mask and we have something called portal. And what this does, it basically flips what is actually being blocked out. So in a mask, what was normally what we had there was we block out what's inside the shape. With the portal, we're masking what's outside the shape. So that's more useful for when you want to have smoke and fire within a hallway or inside of a, like, let's say you've got a building and you just want it in a window, inside of a window, rather than masking around it with the trying to do that sort of convoluted thing. I can now go here and say, let me now just go call it a portal, and now let me just move my smoke here. It might be easier for me to not see the, let's see something over here. Go here and hide the other elements. And now I'm going to do mask boundary, and so it might be easier for me just let me show me the smoke and fire only within this border as opposed to outside. So now when I click on this, and I'm sort of leading you astray, tricking you, I haven't done something, maybe you want to think ahead what I didn't do. When I click the plus key, now, whoops, it's not masked. But I thought I did the masking, and this will happen a lot, even as you get more experience. I thought I masked it. That's not working. Well, you can probably see, Joe or anyone else, you want to see what was wrong. What didn't I do yet? Why is that not working? I don't mean to call in Joe among other people, but you're at the top of the list.
You didn't name it. You didn't pick the boundary type.
Yeah, well, I didn't. I did the mask type, but I think what you say naming. What I didn't do is I clicked on the mask. I didn't assign it. So the mask is just sitting there saying, "Great, I'm going to mask it." I got nothing to mask. So,
Gotcha.
that's the thing that.
To mask.
Yeah. So you see where that is. That you're right. I didn't name it, but the mask is perfectly fine not masking anything. Maybe in some later time we would give a warning. Hey, the mask is here, but it's not masking something. That might be a good idea, just to remind people. But so I say which to mask. Now I set bright fire, and when I do this, now I click plus. And now I've got it right there kind of in my ceiling, which is what I want. Now I may want to sort of stretch it up to the top there. So does that make sense about the portal? You're sort of kind of flipping a switch to get the right kind of slot that you want to mask stuff out.
Instead of creating all the points and getting lost with.
That's exactly. It's getting lost. You might find, and you can usually accomplish things both ways, either the mask or the portal. One way will be a whole slew of points, and the other way will be very simple. So that's a thing to keep in mind. Once you start adding a lot of points, you want to think, am I really doing the most efficient way of doing this? And it doesn't really matter the program, whether it's efficient or not, but just for your sanity, that does matter. So if I want to click and let me say here, I'm going to now extend this into the ceiling. So it's let me hide the other elements, and I'm going to now do mask boundary, and I'm going to bring this up. Let's see. So I can see it looks like in this room, I bring it up over to here, and I bring this one up. I can start adding more points as well. So I can sort of click and add. So I can make it. So I can make it look like whatever I'm matching it. So again, remember your arrow keys on Windows and Mac are going to give you that little nudging capability. And hopefully in the future we'll also have a sort of a scaling, a sort of sizing, so you can kind of zoom feature. So now I'm done with that, and I can still edit my smoke and fire without, it'll stay masked. When I edit this thing, it doesn't unmask it or anything. So now I can really, without worrying, I can just make this really big. I can get it to where I want it to be, maybe up at the top. And now if I hit play, you'll see we get some really nice sort of ceiling smoke, or I can actually we have a new effect, ceiling fire, so let me throw that one in. I'm going to click on that effect. I'm going to clear that. I'm going to go here and get some fire, and I have some ceiling fire there. So something that might be a little more like that. Now, the mask does not even have to be above in the visual order the things that it's masking. So if I click on the mask here, I go here and which to mask, I'm going to mask the ceiling fire. So even though visually right now the fire is on top of the mask, it doesn't really matter from the function point of view. So a good thing, this portal is really good for like these hallways. It's good for windows and buildings. I mean, let me just show an example here. If I were to, let's say I had a new location and I'm going to say like my alpha side, and I'm going to set the background, and I'm going to go here to let's say like this warehouse or something, or this and I guess it's it's a home. I mean a sort of town home type of thing. So if I wanted to show, let's say, fire inside these windows, inside a single window, let's say I'm going to go here and add some fire. I'll do a basic fire there, and then maybe I even want to sort of flip it around. What I can do now with this mask is I can say, let me say utility mask, go here, let me hide this one, and I can now go in a very detailed way, go and just limit it into that window. Now I click on the mask here. I'm going to say which to mask, basic fire. Now let's say I want to now hit that. So now let me actually play this here. Oh, now see, there's a problem. I forgot. The mask type is set to portal, not to. I'm sorry, to mask, not portal. I need to flip that switch. So that'll happen a lot as well as you get used to it. So if I go here, I go and say mask type. Let me make it a portal. And now when I go here, there, I've got it there. Now, if I want to make it look like it's coming through, like behind this, like if the pane is intact, what I can just do is go and change the fire so it's more transparent. So if I go here to I click on the fire, and I say make it opacity. Let me bring the opacity down to something maybe middle or so, maybe a little bit lower so we can kind of see it. And so now you'll see it doesn't quite look, but it gives the impression this is not fire that's on the outside of the, or if it is on the outside, it hasn't really reached very much there. So it's contained inside there. Up, and there I am with my hat there. So I got to get out of there. So does that make sense about this idea of flipping it with a mask type?
Yep.
Okay, terrific. Well, so I'm going to now, we've done mask types. We've done masking multiple elements and sort of releasing the mask on those elements. And, you know, if you go and delete the mask itself, as you can imagine, it no longer does any masking. So I click on that, I hit delete, and now it just sort of sits alone in whatever the elements are there. So, you know, as you get more complex scenarios, you'll have a couple masks on the screen at the same time, and it will be could get kind of confusing. So the idea is, if you can make a single mask, let's say like for this whole roof line, it's better to make a single mask than individual ones. So if I wanted, for example, to have smoke across this whole roof line, it'd be much easier for me, instead of maybe I have smoke coming out of these things, make a single mask that just goes and, let's see, mask boundary, and I just sort of trace this along here. I'm going to go there. And again, I'm sort of zooming through this pretty quickly, but you know, the first couple times you do this, you will, you'll want to. Whoops! So that it didn't really get that edge properly. So try and be closer to where. Oh, even that one. Okay, so let's try and split something else. It usually works pretty well, but it's sometimes it can be a little ambiguous what we're trying to split. That's why it's adding points, and sometimes it can be bizarre. I mean, it's Friday. Maybe it's just saying enough, Jonathan. Enough. So so I'm going here, and so the idea is we want to kind of, instead of making a whole, oh, it still doesn't like that one. So let's go and we see. Yeah, of course, because I'm recording, that's why it's showing it over here. So that's interesting. So let me now bring this point out. Let's see if it will. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so it's not a perfect algorithm, but there we go. So now if we had like 3 or 4 different flames, we could use just a single mask there rather than, let me put a mask over here. I'm sorry, put an element there. Let me put another element. What let's see, I'll put some fire element over here. So you don't want to get too detailed with your mask tying to a single element. So I click on I know I can't reach that mask very easily. See, I'm clicking on hit gray turbulence, so that's where I might use that selection rotator. Click on it, and now which to mask. And I want to mask the gray turbulent and the bright fire. So it hits both of them at the same time. Well, we're just about at 1:45. I mean, we're about 45 minutes into this. I have another really extra section about tough masking situations, so I was going to show some pictures or things that anyone have any questions about kind of what we're doing, or any situation that you would like to see that that might be interesting, or you can imagine is kind of tough.
No, I understand everything so far. It's very informative.
Oh, terrific. Okay. Well, thank you. So what I'm looking at, I will mention here, if we looked at something like a pipeline. Now, I've got to, let's actually say we have someone lying down. So now, again, these masks don't have to be just smoke and fire. I can mask anything, really. So let's say we have this giant person who's at this pipeline. And so I want to sort of make him a little more obscured. So I can go here and just do the same thing, and masks can do smoke and fire and people. It doesn't really matter what the thing is. It's just masking an element. So I can go here and actually go and mask his, let me do mask boundary, and I know this is going to be pretty small, but I can go here and start sort of cut, again, using the same tools, the same technique, but now when I'm masking this guy here, let me move him over there. What to mask? Firefighter victim 1. Yes, and so now if I'm over here, where did he go? Oh, I see. I must have. Oh, I see. I had him fade in. I don't want him to fade in. So that's the danger about just picking a random scenario I already have. So let me do a delay timing. For some reason he was fading in. So I don't want him to fade in. I want him to be there. So now if we look closely, oh, he's still not there. He must be, I must have it set up in another way. But let me actually go and let me finish this example. Let me actually go and bring in I'll bring in another victim. I must have used him up for something else. So if I go here, I'll just make it very clear as well. Firefighter victim, I'm going to now go to I'm using that to hit my mask. I'm going to mask, I'm going to say what to mask. I'm going to say firefighter 2. So now we actually will see, there's my firefighter 2 who's being masked. And the other guy is probably being timed to come in or something, so that's why that's not working. So that's the idea. You can mask anything, really. That may be for hiding people, making people come through windows. If you've got someone who's hanging out a window, let's say we've got our window over here. Let me go to my location over here, and let's say I want to have a person. I'm going to now have a victim who it's going to be let's say a man who's here. Let me go and click on him. Change his posture to at window. Now he already is sort of cut off there at the waist, but you may want to cut that person off with at something higher, or maybe their hands or something. So I could certainly just mask it. Let me actually just bring him. I'll just sort of mask him above that. So if I go here and you got a giant on the roof, I'm going to go select that mask again, get to my mask. And I'm going to go here and say which to mask, and I'm going to mask victim man. So now he's kind of peering over the roof. So, well, I'm going to go to, here we go. So I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention and questions. Certainly at this point.
One question, Jonathan. When you picked up the man at the window, what did you click on to change positions?
Okay, so I'm going to go back. I'll show you. I'm I'm going to go back over here. Let me actually. Okay, so what I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to get to that man. So over here, one of the properties of the people is posture. So each element has its own set of properties or characteristics, and so people have this posture one. So if I click on posture, now it gives me a set of prone. Do I want prone toward camera, on the side? So crawling. So these victims have different postures, and I just then set at window. So now this guy is still being masked here. So if I now just put him over here, you'll see. So does that make sense? That's where we're kind of looking.
You picked that up by the pencil. I got you.
Oh yeah, yeah. So that's also one of the core things that you'll get used to a lot, and will really settle, is using this pencil. So when you put an element down, by default it starts in the movement, rotate, scaling thing. But I would always check out what things are available here. And the one thing, as you mentioned, people, this tap control, and I have another video about it. But the idea here is, let's say you want to, I'll mention it since we're right here on people. If I have this guy and I want to make him disappear, okay, engine 5 got the guy. He got the guy on the roof or something, and only even make him smaller here. So the tap control, what that lets you do is just click on people to make him go away. And I can double click to bring him back. And there's a lot of actual settings in the victims video, and actually I think that we're going to be, I'm trying to remember, I guess I can take a look. Let me go and see. I'm going to bring over our current schedule. Just a minute while I load up our schedule here. Upcoming events. It's loading right now.
And I do have one other question.
Yeah, sure.
In the very beginning when you start, is there like a stock, do you have like a library of stock photos within the...
Well, yeah, so right now we do not. We just have a couple victim types. But that is something that will be coming out soon, the ability to add your own pictures. So right now the answer is no. We just have those set of victims, and if you're interested in certain other pictures, let me know, and maybe we can arrange to put something in. But for right now, it's just.
I saw one of the videos where you were masking a YouTube video where you were masking the plane, and you pulled it up. Mm-hmm. Like I thought the plane scenario was already in a library, and you could just click on that photo and. Oh
yeah, no, not yet. But we're so what I was going to say is, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to have the next one, which is victim mentality, easy way to add realistic victims. So I'll be talking a lot more detail about controlling victims. But certainly, if you have questions before that, or want a more personal attention, just let me know, and I can certainly help. So at this point, I'm going to I'm going to go back here. If anyone else has any questions, I'm certainly happy to. I'm going to stop the recording now, unless someone has any other questions.